Oh my God, Greg, I don't know. I don't know.
You don't know how you're doing? Parker seconds your.
I'm there. I'm there.
How are you all freaking out? The project ended last class period.
Oh, hey!
Oh, this is for the art test.
Oh, it's for the art test.
I'm not really worried about that. I'm just no.
I got that.
I'm just hating it. I'm just hating this one right now.
In the college student's life where you learn to just say, screw it. Just get it.
You got it. You got it. Y'all got this. How many people are in portfolio this semester? Parker's not even listening to me. He doesn't care about me.
I do care.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. So that ends tonight, right?
Yeah.
So
It ends 6 a.m.
tomorrow
Wednesday.
morning.
Oh, 6 a.m. Wednesday.
6 a.m. Wednesday.
Oh, okay, cool.
Technically.
Just gonna let us do myself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but it was for the art test for the people on portfolio. Okay, so all right. So last class period, we looked at all of your animations. They all looked really good, and then you went home and got a long nap to make up for all that sleep you lost.
That's a good thing.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, no naps. Well, I got a pretty good nap in. So, so we're going to move into to project 2. I know we've kind of talked about the overview of what we're doing, but we're going to sort of dive in, talk about what we're doing, and we're going to do it probably in the backwards order than you are expecting. Something else I need today is, so half of the class is taking this for the first time, so that means you're going to be doing the game animation stuff. The other half is repeating it. So that means I need to know what the repeating people are doing for this project if you haven't told me already. Even if you have told me, just let me know sometime before the end of class. How many of you know what you're doing already as repeating? Parker's still not paying attention. Okay, so you already know. I'm just picking at you. Y'all do what you need to do. So I just need to know what y'all are working on.
I love you.
That's like the second student. Sierra said she loved me too. I love all of you. Y'all are very good. Okay, so I will say, several semesters ago, there was a Greg Marlowe fan club, and I don't know what happened to it.
Oh!
But it apparently fell into unpopularity. They made a T-shirt and everything. I don't know what y'all are doing, but
Is that a challenge?
I'm trying to distract you from portfolio.
No, Greg. I can do
No, okay.
No, I need this for the future.
No.
We will make you our team.
Okay, so here's what I did want to say. Since we're going into game animation stuff for most of the class, the people who are repeating may want to consider doing something game related on this project too, if you were wanting to do something game related. Some of you are like, I have no interest at all in doing game stuff. And I know Dusty and you're halfway through a game project already. How's that? I just saw you seem frustrated at something on your computer. Is it giving you problems?
Yeah, so the mesh is exporting properly, like his sword and stuff's exporting, but when I import it into Unreal, it's not there.
We'll look at it. So I uploaded some stuff here on the news. One is for people who are taking the class the first time. It's a series of videos. These videos are going to go over what we're going through today. The second section is a series of videos that I didn't make, right? Because I know some people were interested in using Sequencer to do like some cinematic animation, right? I've watched a whole bunch of videos on it, and I was going to just do an in-class lecture, but I realized what would probably work better is these videos and then me supporting it in class after you've sort of watched through those. These are actually a free set of videos. I have some that are not free, but I can't figure out how to give other people access to them. I was going to change my password, The website literally does not give me the option to change my password, and I don't know what my password is to give it to you. So we can start working through that. It's actually not as hard as I thought it was. It's really just figuring out a couple of buttons to click. Who thinks they may want to do the cinematics on this coming up project?
Me, depending on the time.
Well, so this is for people repeating it. So, yes.
Okay, so it is repeating.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if you could go into detail of what that means. Cinematic?
Cinematic is when, well, in this case, we're referring to it as when the player loses control of the character and you get to watch a video happen. A cutscene, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Technically there's like a slight difference between a cinematic and a cutscene because a cinematic can happen without you losing control, or I guess, basically it's
Like
that.
when a boss pops on?
Yeah, like when you enter an arena, your character kind of freezes and like the boss like explodes everything, and then like they start fighting and all that.
Okay.
So that's what I've kind of been working on to kind of show y'all how to do that. So since they're both game related and we would all kind of be in Unreal at that time, this might be a good time to be working with that. That way we can kind of be in the game headspace. So yeah, if you're wanting to do that, we can hop in there and look at it. For the rest of the class, what we're going to be doing for this project, let's just hop in here and kind of look at some stuff. I'm sharing the screen on Zoom. I strongly recommend you do that today because we're going to be going through stuff step by step to make sure that we all are able to execute the stuff we're doing. So just letting you know that's on there. If you forgot where the link is, if we go up to PTSU E3, DIGM classes, Greg, and then character animation resources. It's the Zoom link is, oh wait, I went too far, I'm sorry. It's under Greg, not under, so Zoom meeting right there. So DIGM classes, Greg. So let's look at the project first. If we go to content, we have our project briefs. And so this is PR2 game set. Yes, I'm recording as well. So those videos I showed you for walking through this process, I'm recording today's class too, which is going to have a slightly newer version of those videos. There's a couple of changes I make that make it a little bit more efficient. So why are we doing this? How many of you have no interest at all in working in the video game industry?
I'll take what you can and give nothing.
So I think that's interesting. That's one of the reasons I do this project is because by the end of this class, some people will change their mind. In truth, at least if you're doing 3D animation, there's very little difference between animation for the film industry and animation for the game industry and what you do from day to day. On top of that, there are way more entry-level positions in the game industry than there are in the film industry. So being open to games opens you up to a whole market that's a little bit more accessible. Having said that, even if you are still like, no, I definitely never want to work in games, that's okay because the job is the same. Like you will still have to do cycles, you will still have to do the same types of animations we're going to do for this, and I'm pretty sure that the film industry is eventually going to move into real-time rendering anyway. I don't know if y'all know this, The Mandalorian, they made that with Unreal. That was, if you watch how they do it, they're projecting Unreal onto walls and they're filming it in real time.
Oh,
so instead of using a green screen, they're just using a real-time rendering environment and filming characters on that backdrop. And that's how they filmed half of The Mandalorian. Like, it was all filmed inside of a building. It's amazing, right? The film industry is changing, the game industry is changing, and eventually it's like they're just going to cross over in a lot of ways. So, well, the reason we're doing this mainly is to open you up to these ideas that that you should consider lots of different avenues for your career, and frankly, because by the end of this project, whichever career type you're wanting to do, you will have 4 more animations to put into your demo reel, right? So, so what we're going to be doing, we're going to use one of the designated game-friendly characters. I'll show you those in a minute. Nothing with a fully articulable face. I'm kind of serious on that one because if you use something with a fully animatable face, you'll probably fail the project because you will not be able to get it into Unreal. There are some characters with the way faces are rigged are not always game friendly. And so I've picked out some characters and I'm going to show you how to test those. But I've seen like the people who have had the most amount of trouble with this project are people who picked a character that they weren't sure was going to go into Unreal and spent like a lot of time fighting with getting their character into Unreal. I really want to take that part off of the plate. So we're gonna get this character in there. Actually, by the end of the day today, we're going to have your character inside of Unreal and playable. So you're going to pick a character, and then you're going to create 4 of the animations listed below. We're going to create an idle for a character. What's an idle?
Like a moving pole.
Right. So it's when you stop giving the game input, right? If you're like, your mom's like, hey, come down here and take out the trash, and you just like let go of the keyboard, you let go of the mouse, your character still stays alive, right? It's still just kind of idling in place. It's just kind of hanging out there, seeming like it's not dead. We're going to do a run animation. Now, I will give you the option of doing a walk or a jog or any type of locomotion there, but in most cases, a walk animation in a game is really annoying because it takes forever to get to where you want it to go. So that's why I kind of recommend a run. We're actually going to talk about walk cycles in this class and how they are very similar to a run, and really all locomotion cycles are pretty much built on the same structure. We're going to do one attack animation, which is stationary, so your character is punching forward or kicking forward or something. The big issue is the character has to end up standing in the same location as they were at the beginning of that animation, right? It's a loop, right? So if your character takes a step forward during the middle of that punch, the way it's going to work in this game is after you're done doing that, your character would snap back to its starting point, and that's just going to look weird. For those of you who are kind of curious, that's actually what Dusty is fighting with. Is there's a way of making it move forward. It's really complicated. Amy, are you doing that? Going to try to do that as well?
Well, I'm doing the attack sequence combo.
Okay.
The combo attack sequence, and that was still a little bit. I'm still having trouble, which I might come back tomorrow and ask.
Okay, cool. So so that's one of the things we're going to do, some form of attack, and then we're going to do a jump. Now, a jump we're going to have to break up into 3 different parts. There's the jump up, which is the character like pushing off the ground, right? There's the idle in the middle, where the character is floating in the air, and then there's the landing. Why not just animate one long jump?
You can jump from different heights in a game.
Right.
Jump and double jump.
Yeah, so we need that loopable idle where the character is floating in the air, because you may jump off of a 2-foot tall platform, or you may jump off of a 50-foot building in your game, right? The character needs to idle until right before they hit the ground, right? And that's the landing. So we're going to create those. Bless you. We're going to create those 4 animations. I know that sounds like a lot. If you were budgeted the amount of time you needed to create these animations in a game studio, it would be 2 days. Right? You have 2 days to get those 4 animations done. That would be a rough estimate, maybe 2.5, depending on like fidelity and complexity of the character. So animation has a really quick turnaround. So we're going to make those animations, and then we're going to import all the animations into Unreal. How many of you have never used Unreal? All right, that's okay.
Is it okay?
It's okay.
It sounds like it's not okay.
You're going to be fine.
Is it gonna be fine?
You're going to be fine.
It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, see, Amy's
only gonna
backing
be
me up.
fine, y'all.
It's going to be fine.
Y'all gonna be hysterical after this.
Yeah. We're going to import them into Unreal, and we're going to make it fully playable. So you'll be able to play your character running around in a level. Sort of the optional but recommended thing that we're also going to do is we can download some environments from the Unreal Marketplace and put those into your level, so your character is running around something interesting. So what you're going to be turning in is a screen capture video of the animation in game. Okay, so I'm capturing my screen right now while we're talking about this with OBS. That's a free software. So what you're going to be turning in is a video of you playing the game, right? And you're also going to turn in 2 play blasts or renders of each of the animations, right? So we can kind of look at those outside of the game, mainly just so I can give you feedback on them as we're going along. However, although you're turning in those animations in the play blast, that's not what you're being graded on. The grade is going to be based off of the playable video, okay, or the video of gameplay. Why is that so important?
So you need to know how to get the animations in Unreal.
So there's that, but I mean, I guess like what's different about the play blast and an animation in Unreal?
Well, play blast is just basically just a quick play blast with like nothing rendered. And I think if I remember rightly, Unreal is just with like it's almost completely rendered, but not exact. I think.
So there's the render quality. Like we could have lights and stuff like that. Jared, what were you gonna say?
Presentation. It's different.
So it is a different presentation, but so here's an interesting thing about the difference between games and film, right? So y'all have watched Toy Story 2, right? Yeah. Let's try that one, right? Yeah. So you know, like when is it Squeaker? Is that his name? What's the little guy like falls out the window, and then Woody jumps out, or Buzz jumps out to go rescue him, right? And we're all like, no, Buzz, don't do it, right? Well, next time we watch the movie, let's just not let Buzz jump out the window, right?
Like, didn't learn from the first movie.
We're just gonna be like, no, stay in the room, and then we can just watch a different movie, right? Like we can't do that, right? Like a game animation, let me rephrase that. An animation for a game serves a different purpose than an animation for a film, right? Because an animation for a game is reactive. We get to the purpose of the animation in a game is for the player to realize that their input, their interaction with the computer, with the game, had some effect, right? You press the X button, and your character jumped up off the ground, right? And it's a reaction to the player's input. Because of that, animations have to be more than just rendered, right? They have to be implemented for games in a way that is like satisfying. So think of it, if you've ever played a game where you have to like hit something with a sword or a stick or something, right? And the X button or the A button or triangle button, whatever is on your control pad, right, is what causes that to happen. Can you imagine hitting that button and it taking 2 seconds for your character to actually swing the stick or to swing the sword, right? That would drive you nuts. That's the difference in video games and film. Film is completely passive. No matter what we do, like Buzz is always going to jump out of that window and go after Squeaker or whatever his name was. Was it Squeaker? Wheezy. He's going to go after Wheezy. Wheezy lost his Squeaker.
Woody did it.
Woody did do it.
Woody goes after him?
Yeah.
Which one's the? Oh, Buzz goes after Woody after that. Yes. Okay, you're right. Because I was imagining Buzz running across like in the under the little cone. So yes, it was Woody.
It was.
So.
And
Well, we should
Rick's
send
yelling,
Buzz next
Don't
time."
go, Woody. We love you. I love that movie.
So I want to show you something here. I got a line in here that says, this project is not eligible for animators wanting to work in 2D. So I'm just going to go ahead and go in here and backspace over the not. This project is eligible for animators wanting to work in 2D. Okay. There's a caveat to that. I'm teaching this class in 3D. If you're wanting to do this in 2D, that means there's some extra research on your plate, and that extra research is kicking in today. Because you have to figure out how you want to show your animations in 2D. There are a couple of easier answers, right? What we're doing today in Unreal, Unreal is a full 2D game engine as well, right? So you can import 2D animation sprites instead of these 3D animations we're doing. However, I've never done that. Like I haven't done. We can research it on how to do it, but that research is going to kind of fall on you. I thought about trying to come up with like a full like support system for doing this in 2D, but really game animations in 2D are just ever so slightly easier than game animations in 3D. So just to kind of make it kind of balanced, it would still be the same animation list, but some of the research of figuring out how to implement it into your chosen platform is on you all. Now, having said that, you don't have to use Unreal if you want to do this in 2D. Actually, probably what I would recommend is a program called Construct 3. We used to use that in the game design classes. That may have been what you all used when you were in there. It was Construct 2 at that point. It's very easy to kind of implement stuff. But what you don't get in Construct is pretty much anything for free. Right? So if you're doing it in 2D, you kind of have to create some backgrounds. You have to create the game animations, and you have to get it kind of playable. There's a lot of tutorials, and I can help you find those tutorials. But know that is like, there's a lot of different options for that. Unity is also a pretty good 2D game engine. Some of you maybe are more familiar with Game Maker or something like that. Anything you want to use to make a 2D game, you're welcome to do that. I just recognize that there's too many options for me to have a lecture in this class on every one of them, right? Having said that, all of the process should be the same. Right? Because what we're going to do first is we're going to make a prototype playable version of our game with really bad animations. Right? That's the first step, is making the worst animations you possibly can and getting the game playable. And that's what we're going to be doing today. And then after that, after it's playable, you make the animations that will work within that game. Right? So, right now, let me double check this, but the project is due March 7th. That seems fast, but I think correct. So if I go back to content, we can look at our schedule. Yeah, that is right. March 10th. I don't know why it's the 7th.
It's a Saturday.
Do what?
The 7th is a Saturday.
Yeah, I must have just forgot to change the date on that. So let's go back and fix that. Content. So games that. So it will be Tuesday, March 10th. Okay. So this is a little bit of a shorter project, but we're getting started on time. So this gives us, I don't know, it's not that much shorter. It's like 3 weeks, 3 full weeks. 1, 2, 3, and plus a little bit, right? So this is doable. But you'll notice on the schedule for today, it says Engine Day. Okay. So, questions about the project before we jump into this?
Are we going to do, like, say, backgrounds, or is this going to be simple environments?
Yeah, we're not modeling anything, but there are environment pieces within Unreal that you can get for free and build your own level, or just use a level that already exists and have your character running around that level. You can also have it just running around inside of the sort of the gray level that kind of comes by default. It's kind of your call on that.
I don't know if this is much of a question, but is it a good idea to just do a 2D thing, or should we just stick to 2D?
I think it depends on how comfortable you are researching sort of the technology of this. If you decide to do 2D and you want to use Construct, it's something that we teach to like middle school kids, like on summer camps. It's completely something that you all can figure out within just a few days. But it is going to require a little bit more time of like sort of solving your own problems and running into your own hiccups. If you're using Construct, I can help a little bit with it. I've just never done 2D animation in Unreal. I could also point you to some other people, but I would say do the one you're most excited about. Like if you're just really like, I have no interest in doing this in Unreal. Like that's one of the reasons I kind of changed it to where you can do it in 2D, is because Kat Hargis had this class last year, and she just had no interest in Unreal at all. And so I don't want this to be a wasted project for you. So if you have some interest in 3D, I would encourage you to do this one. But if you're like, no, 2D is what I want to do, I say go ahead and do the 2D one, and I can at least help you by helping you find the right tutorials and the right research for it. Some of the stuff we're going to be doing today will apply if you're doing it in Unreal. It's really just how to get the characters in as 2D sprites that I'm not as familiar with. And I can do a little bit of research and see if I can find some like walkthroughs for that and help you out with that. Sierra, did you have a question too?
Oh, where's the list of rigs that you can use?
Good question. So I have done a little. Did that answer your question? Yeah, we can talk about it a little bit more after class if you want to. So up on the D2L server, ETSU E3, DIGM classes, Greg, character animation, resources. So there used to be a folder in here called game rigs, right? It's now under this old folder. Please don't use those. You can use those. What I've started to recognize is there are a couple of issues with them that make them less appealing to watch eventually. It's not that you can't make them appealing, it's that they're a little vanilla, and students have a tendency to get kind of vanilla results because of that. What I've decided to do instead is this new game rigs folder. The old game rigs were all characters that I had made or downloaded from some sort of character builder and rigged up. And what I've done instead is I've just gone through and found a whole bunch of free rigs, and I've tested them to a pretty reasonable level of sureness that these will work fine within the game engine. Basically, I've exported all of them at least once with some form of deformation on them to see if they work within the game engine. Most of these are created with the advanced skeleton rig, which is what the Truong rigs are made of. And for the most part, that usually works with a game engine. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to use these rigs. It means that you're kind of going out on a limb if you don't. Right? There are other rigs that might work, but if they don't, like you're up for probably a lot of hours of problem solving to try to get them to work. Right? So I'll look through them really quick so you can see them. There's this ASRI rig. I know it works because it's actually the rig that comes with a book called Game Animation. Yes.
Does the FBX review still give a decent foreshadowing of what the works on?
Yep, and we'll actually look at that here in just a second because that's the first way we're going to test it. Blockout Dude, he actually has no materials on him. This is how he's rendering inside of Maya. He'll probably go into Unreal as just sort of a gray character, but then you can add like your own like materials to him if you want to just put like a metal material on him. This cyborg character. Inside of each of the folders, you can kind of double click and see an example of what the rigs look like. EOF girl, she's again kind of generic. What you could probably do again is like, there's like chrome materials and stuff like that. You can make her like a liquid metal character or something like that if you'd like, once you get her into Unreal. Jago, I guess is how you say it. So I found a couple of characters that are a little more cartoony and a little more fun to kind of work with. We got that character, and then there's sort of a Hulk version of a similar character. This is if you're wanting to do something a little more bulky and a little more stylized. I will say this character looks really neat. It's just a skeleton that can walk around. It works. I was able to get it in, well, at least it works into the FBX review. But we'll know by the end of the day if you pick one, which ones do not work, because we're going to be trying to get those into Unreal today. The one thing I will say about this is the model is a little bit high res, so it bogs down it may bog down just a little bit. Once you get it into Unreal, it probably won't be an issue, but I think it's about 100,000 faces. So just recognize that it's a little bit heavier in terms of detail. There's this character, which I was skeptical about at first, but I was able to get it to work okay. The person who makes this, Christopher Scoffs, he actually has another rig that looks really good that is game friendly, but it's like for sale, so it's like $35. So I didn't get it. We got another skeleton rig that's not like a monster skeleton. It's more of a human skeleton. And then I tested this one out. The Zelda rig does seem to go into it okay. Some of the things I will say about the Zelda rig, there's a lot of props with that rig. Don't use any of them, just because that adds one extra complication for you to get a prop working within the game. So, in fact, any of the characters you're wanting to do, I would encourage you to use for your attack, at least the first time through. Don't worry about doing a weapon for that attack. You'll kind of have to go back into Maya and do some additional rigging, and then to get it to go into Unreal correctly if you do. So just the easiest way is a punch or a kick, or something like that. Right? Okay. You can use other rigs. I'm going to show you how to test those today. And I just recognize that you're kind of stepping into it and taking a little bit of a risk if you do, because there is a chance you'll work on this for several hours and then realize it's not going to work and you have to start over. Right? That sometimes happens. So I'm just more than anything trying to save you some headache by saying I'm pretty confident that all of these characters will work in the game engine. All right. So just again, how many people said they've never used Unreal before? Okay, that's quite a few of you. How many of you have used it and just don't feel very familiar with it at all?
I still remember it, but it's been since principal class, so I kind of forgot a few things.
All right, that's cool. So, so today's class is going to be pretty sort of hefty for us, right? So what we're going to be doing today is opening up Unreal. We're going to be opening up Maya. We're going to be picking a character, and then you're going to walk through this process with me. So I would say even if you're doing this in 2D, I would still kind of walk through this process with me a little bit just to test it out, because if you're doing it in 2D, you may still decide you're going to do it in Unreal, and big portions of this will still work within Unreal. We're going to export out a very rough test version of each animation. And so when I say a very rough test version, I mean an animation that you made in less than 15 seconds, right? We're going to do it really fast. No details at all. You're deleting this later, right? Or you're at least rewriting this later. So this is a really common practice in game animation. Why spend hours and hours and hours polishing an animation if it doesn't work for gameplay? So right now I'm working with a company where I'm doing a bunch of boss animations for these giant boss battles, and it changes a lot. Like I'll do full animations, and then they just decide that doesn't work, we have to do a different animation for this. So the workflow of how that usually functions within a game studio is that you make a testable version of the animation, right? It may be 2 or 3 keyframes that lets the player see that animation executing, right? So I have a character that's breathing fire. I may have just, it's in the idle pose, and then one pose with a character leaning its head forward, one pose with a character leaning its head back. It's going to look really bad, but for gameplay purposes, it will trigger, and you'll get to see, is this fun, right? If you think about film, right? The sort of end all be all is story, right? Is this entertaining to the story? Is this fun to watch? Is this progressing character development and plot, right? For games, it's is it fun to play? Is this an enjoyable experience, right? And so we're trying to test these animations out to see if they're fun, but also just to see if they're functional, right? We have an animation with a character that has multiple heads, and that's a really complex tech problem to solve, right? So what we do is very simple animations for that, so we can get them into the engine and test them and prototype them. And once it's working and once it's playable, then we know exactly what our output is going to be. Rendering takes 10 seconds for you, right? Because what you do is you export, and then you re-import that into the game, and you start playing the game to see if it's fun or see if it feels right. So let's say you have a character jumping, right? Does the height of that jump feel right? Does the intensity of the jump feel right? You have a character punching, right? Does the intensity of that punch feel right? Is it clear that that's what's happening? Do you have too much anticipation and not enough follow through, right? All of those things are things that you can test out immediately. In the final format, the player will see it. Right? So every game production you will ever work in, the first thing you do is get a rough version of the animation into the engine so you can see how it's executing in gameplay, right? So that's what we're working on today, is that by the end of this class, you will have a fully functional version of the game that is playable. All the animations are just going to suck, right? But it's all going to work correctly, or it all should work correctly. What I would really encourage you to do is just kind of walk along with me, because tomorrow's class, we have homework due. And for that homework, what's going to happen is your mentors are going to play your game. Right? If you don't have a game for them to play, your mentors aren't going to have anything to play, right?
And that will be fun. That will have fun.
I know, Parker wants to have fun. You don't want to disappoint Parker. Like, so, actually, everybody can get a chance to play your game. But once you're at that part, like, please trust me on this. If you do this part first, the rest of this project will be easy for you, or easier for you, right? We're doing 4 really short animations. If you do this part first, like, literally, I could crank out the rest of this project in like 10 hours, right? If you do this part last, every semester I see somebody try to put that off to the end, and it just ends up that you turn in something that's incomplete, right? Because part of the completing it is the work that you have to do to polish it within the engine. So that's why I'm sharing the screen with you. That's why I'm recording the video. That's why I have backups of the video up on Course Home. That's what this link is right here. This is a much younger Greg from 2017, back when I was just a naive child, recording a version of this. I will say that some of this has changed just in like the export and the import process. That got easier. And so what we're going to go over today is going to make that a little easier for you. The rest of this, 2 through 5, are pretty much correct, except for this adding physics option. I think that there's a much easier version of that we can do today. So that's the part that we're gonna. I know I was chatting with Dusty about it. Do you remember the button that it is you changed for that? From the adding the physics.
I don't remember the exact name. I can look at it.
Yeah, I may tap you on the shoulder when we get to that point. So what we're going to have is we're going to get our characters into the game. They're going to idle when we're doing nothing, but as soon as we hit the W key, right, they're going to start running. They're going to run around our scene. At any point that we hit the space bar, the character will jump up in the air, and then we're going to sort of set it up to where when I click the mouse, the character will punch. Right? What this video number 4 is we need to actually see a reaction from that punch. So we're going to turn on some physics in the scene, so when the character punches, it actually collides with elements within the scene, and you can knock over blocks and stuff like that. And then the final thing, we're not maybe going to do that one in class today, but it's creating the final build. And so let me show you what that final build will basically look like, because I still have my version from previous classes in here. So this PC, I'll go to B. I'm sorry, what?
I was trying to read the screen with the tiny writing, and then I realized I have it.
What's happening here? Did I click the right thing? Cancel. Let me see if I have it in here as a. Did I do builds? Oh, I thought I did a build of these. Let me look up here really quick and see if I still have it in my old folder, just so you can see it. No, it's going to be in my. There it is. Taking a minute to copy it, maybe. It's going to take several minutes to copy it. Okay, so in the meantime, you should probably be looking through those characters and figuring out which character you're wanting to work with. I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. DIGM classes, Greg, character animation, submissions, nope, resources. I'm downloading that file, it's taking forever. So I'll have a preference on which one you want me to work with?
Zelda.
Zelda?
Skeleton. Darn it.
You're too slow, Parker. Too slow. Zelda. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And I'll put this on my D drive.
It's a great rig.
I'll do Greg in class. This is a very good place. Paste. Okay. So I'll show you previous versions of this. This one? Oh, is it not? Oh, is this still the cable is messed up or whatever on it? Did anybody ever figure this out? Apparently not. I'm sorry. Is there another here? I don't know if they setting on that back one or not.
The back, that one, you can have this one. You want this one? I'm not working. I mean,
Yeah, possibly swap operations and follow along. Probably.
you're good.
It's actually just the Cintiq is somebody's actually like removed the cord that is needed for it. Okay. So this is one of the projects I did in the past, and you can just kind of see an example of what the build looks like. Open on the other screen here. So I have this character here. Right, you'll see that when he's just standing there, he's just idling. Right? If I use the WASD keys, I can make him run around. At any point that I hit the space bar, he'll jump. And you'll see that he can jump from various heights, and he still doesn't sort of trigger that land animation until he hits the ground. If I click my mouse button, my left mouse button, he punches. And if he punches an object, it actually reacts to him, right? Some of them react a little too much, but that one feels appropriate, I guess. He's a pretty big guy. So we got physics turned on a lot of things in here too. Means I can go over here and knock over all these dominoes, and you'll see them kind of falling. So this is roughly what we're going to be building in class today. And with everything except for some of the texturing and stuff, this is something we can get done pretty quickly. So, yay! I'm knocking stuff over. I guess it's interesting. I got this one kind of messed up to where he can get trapped up on it. Okay, so that's what we're going for. The character I'm animating is the Zelda project. Okay. Actually, let me put this in a different folder here. We'll do new folder game anim. I'm gonna put my Zelda project in there. I've already got Maya open. Oh crap! And so I'm gonna go over here and set my project to the Zelda folder. Open scene. And so this is the point where you probably want to kind of start following along, get your character set up. Class, game anim, Zelda project. So I want to set it to there, Control C, set my project. That way I can open up that one, I think. Okay, and so this is what I get. Couple of really quick things I'm going to do before I go any further. I want to make sure she's in FK, so I grab these two controls, little cog controls on her hands, set that to FK. I also just before you start animating, you'll also probably want to be able to see the cape controls. Those are on this cog on her head. You'll also see that she has all sorts of different things that you can turn on and off, right? Don't use any of those. The only thing you want to really be able to turn on is the cloak geo is visible and the cloak controls we want to make visible. So we have these little controls here to edit, right? And let me look in the character. Oh, really? Yes.
How do you change it from IK?
Oh, if you select these controls right here, these little cogs on the hand, you should have an FK and an IK option in your channel box.
So does that one
I set mine to FK, and FK is the one where you can rotate, and also where like the arms will kind of they're on control apparently, where the arms will kind of go with the rest of the body if you move her. So yeah, I would probably recommend FK. You can work in FK. Yes.
Something happened to my computer. I'm not sure why. It's like a red screen. I can't touch anything. Right, upward.
It feels like a shortcut or something. Yeah, try to restart with. You may have to sort of drag select. Okay, so again, you can pick whatever character you want. I'm just kind of going with this character. And before I go any further, let's go ahead and start opening up Unreal. So I'm going to look at something really quickly first. Oh, that's annoying. Okay. Okay. So if you've never opened up Unreal before, what do we, or maybe some of you have, what do we type in to find Unreal? Because if I start typing in, right, it's Epic Games Launcher. So yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. So if you start typing Unreal, it will find this, but it's not listed as Unreal. Basically, Epic kind of owns a whole bunch of stuff, right? They own a bunch of games that they want to sell you. They own a game store where they can sell you other people's games. They also own Unreal, the game engine. And all of that is sort of housed in this Epic Games Launcher. So go ahead and click that. Oh, are you joking?
Just push continue.
Okay. Okay, it's not a very big update. So it asked me if I want to update. I hit continue, and it's going ahead and updating the game launcher. It's not updating Unreal. It's just updating the launcher. So and that's happening over here on this other screen. There we go.
Okay, sorry. I wasn't paying attention. What are you doing?
Epic Games Launcher. Opening that up.
Epic Games.
I got choose your install location going.
Yeah, give me a second. We'll kind of follow along here.
Okay.
Okay, so you're going to get to this point, right? If you have an account, go ahead and sign up for it. If you don't, we can click this sign in later. It's a free account. I kind of recommend you go ahead and sign up for one eventually. You don't have to do it right now if you don't want to. But what that'll allow us to do is download some of the free content that we may want to put in there as a level, right? So right now, though, I'm just going to do sign in later because I honestly can't remember my login. I'll have to look it up. There we go. They're also having a big sale in case you want to buy some games. Okay, so we see a couple of things. There's the store where we can buy some games. There's the library where if you're signed in, you'll be able to see your games, right? Very much like Steam. And then there's the Unreal Engine tab right there. Right? That's the one we're looking for. Now we have a version of Unreal Engine installed on here right now. This is actually pretty important. That version right there, you see up there, you see where it says sign in Unreal Engine 4.24? 4.24 is the version that we're going to be using, or whatever version it'll give us right here, is the version we're going to be using in this class, right? Now, if you go home and start working on this and you download a version higher than that, let's say 4.25 comes out, right? And you download that and open it on your computer at home, when you come back here, you won't be able to open that file, right? Because you're going to be on an older version. There's ways of sort of doing a locked version, but the other way you can do that is when you go home to download it, you can just download a slightly older version, right? So, let me see.
I had this problem last time. Yeah, I had this problem last time with game design.
Right. So remember whatever version, and the version that's in this class shouldn't change because it's part of the it's part of the image. So 4.24 is what we should be working on, and then when you go home, you can use that as well. So let's go ahead and click this Unreal Engine there. Sign in later. I want to use the engine launch. There it is. So for some reason, I had sign in before. Oh, okay, that's what it is. 4.24 is the newest version. We have 4.23 here. If I wanted 4.24, I'd have to sign in. So basically, it just made me go through that again. But since we have 4.23, I'm just going to launch that. So basically what that means is if you go home, we're not getting off to a good start, are we? Anybody else getting this?
Mine's not even installed.
Yeah, mine's installing, so.
It's installing?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to install it every time you log into a new computer. It's not automatically installed with these computers.
Hooray for school system!
Yeah.
It just worked like that.
We must upgrade.
There should be a version on here that.
I think that.
Okay.
Because I guess the Epic Games is installed on these computers, but it doesn't automatically do the Unreal.
Okay. So we want to go to. It says it's right there though. Okay. This is annoying because that's going to take like 20 minutes to install, isn't it?
It takes longer now. That I don't know why, but it takes like 35 to 40 minutes now.
Yep.
I'm on 4%.
It starts off pretty fast, but once it gets to about 90% and starts doing all the verifying and stuff, that's when it slows down a lot.
Why is this one that's on it not launching? Okay, well let's go ahead and start that. I'm going to try to see if I can figure out one more thing. So I'm going to hit the little plus up here next to engine version. I have to sign in. Still going to take me to that, isn't it? Dismiss library. Later. Do you have to sign in?
I always do anyway, but it seems that way. What might be happening is 4.24 is installed on your computer and it's looking for those assets instead of like launching 4.23. Like it's looking 4.24 and trying to launch this 4.23.
Installed. Yeah, let's see if this is just going to take forever to do it that way. Let's see if Todd already has it downloaded somewhere where his class can pull it down. I'm in the wrong folder. This promises to be a very fun YouTube video to watch.
Pause it.
Yeah, let me do that. Remind me to unpause it.
Start the recording back.
I'm recording again. Okay. Okay, so there's a process on how you can do this without having to download it every time, or really without even having to use the Epic Games Launcher. I was going to paste that into my folder so you can use that, but Todd already has it, so we're going to steal it from Todd. And what I would recommend you do is copy this to your D drive, right? It'll run more smoothly from your D drive. I know you can't take it with you on your D drive. You can always copy it onto your hard drive when you're going, but it's going to run kind of slow from your portable hard drive probably. I don't know. Are y'all having an okay result on running it from the hard drive? Or do you have yours on your hard drive? No, you haven't installed it.
I just install it every time.
Okay, so here's how you find it. Everybody with me? Pause the YouTube video you're watching and follow along with me. Under DIGM classes, Emma, and then it's, I think, ETSU software. Nope, I was just there. What was that? Dropbox, and then Spring 2020 resources. And then under that, there's this production software. That right there, that folder, you need to copy it. So stop double clicking and drag that somewhere to your D drive, okay? I'm gonna put it on that game animation folder that I had here. It's huge. It's like 8 gigabytes. So it's gonna be downloading for a few minutes, even though it's downloading through the network. Hopefully we'll get it faster than downloading it through the internet, okay? It's not even started downloading yet. It's still just counting how many gigabytes it is. But we only have to do this once, so hopefully. or I guess you don't have to put it in your D drive. You could probably put it in like your student drive or whatever that is that goes with you, if that works better for you. Okay. So while this is copying down, we're going to go ahead and start making our animations. So again, just in case anybody missed it, up in DIGM classes, Emma, Dropbox, Spring 2020 resources, production software, copy that somewhere local.
Copy and paste.
Yeah, or just drag and drop it. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of gigabytes. So, okay, while that's doing that, let's go look at our character. Okay, this is just not going as smoothly as I thought it was going to. Has it even started downloading yet? Okay, so while this is downloading, back into Maya with our character. Okay. So we have that list that we needed to work through to get our 4 animations. It's really 7 or I guess 6 animations if you think about it in terms of numbers of animations we actually need. We're going to go ahead and start setting up the template for that, and we're going to go ahead and start making those animations. Okay? So work along with me, because we're going to also go through the export process together. So first things first, I want to sort of spread out my timeline in a way that I can quickly get to each of those animations. Now I'm going to do it all from one file right now, but later you can isolate these into individual files if you want to. But I'm going to show you a new thing inside of Maya you probably aren't familiar with. If you go to File, there's this thing in here that says Game Exporter. Right? So open that up. So even if you're not working in games, this is a really handy tool. Okay? Because really all this is a timeline editor. Okay? So we have our model. This is where we can define what our model is and where we're going to export it to. But then we also have this thing here for animation clips. And for this, I can go in here and I can set up new clips. Yes?
What was it? I can...
File,
File.
Game Exporter.
I don't see that one here.
Okay. We'll fix it. So that's interesting. It's not showing up for some people. That means it's probably a plugin that just hasn't been turned on. So we're going to go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager, and just type in Game. Try those two. Make sure both of those are checked on. Are either of them unchecked for you?
No. Alright, I got it now.
Oh, does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, so once you have this, what this is going to allow us to do is sort of keep track of all of the animations in our scene. This is actually really handy if you have multiple shots as well. You can set yours up as shots. So this first animation, I'm just going to hit this little plus sign. It's going to add a new clip. I'm going to call this clip idle. And I'm going to set my time range from frame 100 to frame, let's do 200. No, you know what? It's kind of a short idle. But let's go ahead and do 200 for right now. And so now I have this clip that is frame 100 to 200, and that's where my animation lives. Now the cool thing about this is if I click this little film strip here, watch what happens to my timeline. It snaps to that range. Right? So I can go through here and I can set up all of the different animation clips I need, even if I'm not doing this for games, right? This is a nice way to keep track of multiple clips inside of your timeline. Now there's something I forgot to do first that we're going to go ahead and do now because we need to sort of make this in terms of frames. So film is 24 frames per second, right? Maya by default sets itself to 24 frames per second. How many frames per second are games?
60. 30 is really bad.
60, 30 if they're really bad. Good point. 90 if they're VR, right? Like there's a lot of different numbers, but all of them are divisible by 30 for the most part, right? 30 is sort of the refresh rate that we're comfortable with without having to get into like some crazy numbers, like we're animating at 120 frames per second, right? If we animate at 30 frames per second, a refresh rate of 60 frames per second is still going to look fine at that 30, right? So you want a game to refresh at 60, but the animation is playing back at 30. And basically what happens is your animation will refresh on frame 2, and then it will refresh on frame 2.5, and then on 3 and 3.5 and 4. So we need to be working in something that is like in that 30 range, right? Games and Unreal wants to recognize 30 as your frame rate. Now it'll play back at a faster refresh rate than that, or it should. But that's what we're aiming for. So before I go too much further, I need to set Maya to be playing at 30 frames a second. Now, I know what a lot of people want to do is click this drop-down box and change that to 30. That's not the same thing. That's changing how quickly it plays it back when you hit play, right? That means if you want to watch your animation slower than it actually is. Right? How we actually need to change our frame rate is we need to go to our animation settings. So that's under Windows, Settings and Preferences. And then under Animation, no. It's under Timeline, isn't it? No, I'm sorry, it's under Settings. I should know this. Yes, there it is. So under the Settings tab, Time Slider, we get our frame rate at 24 frames per second, and I can change it to 30 there. Now you'll see when I do that, my timeline kind of shifts, so don't worry about that just now. There's some other things you can change in here if you want to. So one of the cool things about the Time Slider, this option is this is also where we can set our update view. So I usually change that from active to all. And that means if I have more than one viewport, when I scrub in my time slider, I will see all of the viewports update. The other thing you can do is you can change like how thick your key ticks are, like the little red line. You can make it thicker if it makes it easier to see. So this will work all right. I'll go ahead and hit save. And so now I should be at 30 frames per second. Now, again, that messed up my timeline, but the range is still 100 to 200 here. So I should be able to click that and it'll reframe it. And so from frame 100 to 200 is my time slider. How's this download going? It still hasn't even started downloading. Has anybody's even started downloading yet?
Nope.
Keeps going up.
Rising up.
I'm like, I don't even need you to count them. I just need you to start copying them. We can count them later. Like it's like, look at all these files I discovered. I'm like, I don't care. Just download the thing. Okay. Anyway, I'm guessing this is going to take a little while though. So if we don't get to this part, we won't get to this part, but we'll be all right. We will roll with those punches. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my animations real quick. My idle, I would say you make your idle somewhere between 3 to 10 seconds long. So there's really a range you could have here, depending on how energetic you want it to feel, right? So right now I did 100 frames. That's just a little over 3 seconds. So 90 frames will be 3 seconds. And so if you count that, that's how long until we start to see a loop, right? 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. That may feel a little fast to me. And it really depends too. If you have a very big character and maybe they're doing this big, like, hulking breathe cycle, you don't want it to be a perfect loop that just feels repetitive, right? So the other thing is different types of games have different types of idles, right? A fighting game may have a really short idle because your character needs to be able to come out of that idle very quickly and they need to feel energetic, right? I'm going to go ahead, this is a third person character. I'm going to go ahead and make mine a little longer. Just kind of thinking about it right now. I'll go ahead and do, let's say 300. Oh. And I'm just kind of figuring this out now because I need to have enough room on my timeline. My next animation is going to be my run. Now I want to give myself some room in case I've changed my mind on any of these animations. Maybe I decide I want to make my idle 400 or something. So I'll start my run at, say, 500. And a run is going to take probably somewhere between 20 to 30 frames, depending on how big and how fast your character is going. So I'll do, just as a starting point, let's say I'm going to do 522. So I'm giving myself about 23 frames to do that. And I'm going to name that one Run. I'm going to go ahead and add punch. Or, you know what? I'm going to call this attack because I'm not for sure if I'm doing a punch or a kick yet. I'll give this one a range of, say, 700 to probably 800 should be plenty. Probably too much because we want it to be kind of fast. Now this is where the animation gets a little confusing, right? So I can't open up Unreal to show you this. This is really frustrating. 20 gigabytes. I think I have this in here somewhere. I can show it to you in another way. Okay. What is this? Okay. So, yeah. So we know kind of how a jump works, right? We've probably animated something akin to this before, right? We always talk about how a jump has to have an anticipation to build up that energy and then the push off the ground. So the last point in which the character is touching the ground is the contact pose, right? And then the character travels up in the air to the highest point on their jump. And then they start falling back toward the ground they contact the ground, right? And then they squash into that to absorb that energy. And we know that that's kind of sort of falls along with the bouncing ball jump animation. We can kind of look at this a little bit more later. A squash for the anticipation, the stretch on the contact, the up or the midair, the stretch, and then the squash again. So here's the difference, though, right? For an animation inside of a game, right? We have it really broken up into these pieces, right? The idle is the neutral piece where the character is like, where you're not hitting any buttons, right? But as soon as we smack or hit, press, whatever, the jump button, it changes. We send a signal that says we want our character to leave the ground. Right? That's where we're going to play the jump up animation. Now there is a difference in what we really want to animate in here and what we see in our jump up, right? Because like we said, this has to feel reactive. If I tap my space bar, that's because I want my character to leave the ground as soon as I tap that space bar, right? If I tap it and the character anticipates down and then jumps up, the thing I was trying to jump over maybe hits me, right? Yes?
So with game animation, would you say that having strong key poses is more important if we're going to do something as drastic as knock off anticipation frames?
I would say yes. So here's really what you're trying to do is if we look at this, well, I wouldn't say it's more important. I would say that it's very important that you have clarity in your poses, right? So that contact pose, from the jump, has to be extremely clear, right? And is probably going to be either the first or second frame, not pose, but frame of your jump animation. Because how Unreal is going to work is as soon as I tap the space bar, our character is going to pop off the ground, right? That means we need to see that jump pose really quickly, right? I would probably do 2 frames, and we're going to sort of ease into it. But what that means is really we're going to lose that anticipation pose entirely. And the reason, again, for that is if we don't, when I hit the space bar, my character will pop up in the air while they're squatted down, right? Because Unreal is just going to trigger the character jumping immediately. So basically, draw a big X to that anticipation, right? So the jump up animation is going to be the character going from this contact pose to the first frame of being up here in the air, right? The loop animation, the jump loop animation, is going to be the character in the air in one pose, and we're going to kind of make them feel like they're hovering, right? So it's a floating animation. The way to think of it, anybody ever watch Bill and Ted, like the Bill and Ted movies? You know they're making a third one, right? It's coming out like later this year. I'm super excited about it. Bill and Ted Face the Music. Anyway, you remember in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey when they were falling forever into hell? Right, yeah, that's how I like to think. I think actually they were on their way to purgatory at that point. But that's how I like to think of it. Because you've played games before where you can jump off a building and fall for minutes, right? Whatever that animation needs to look like as that character is falling forever for your character, right? So that's what that loop animation is going to look like. So what's going to happen is we're going to transition up to that, and then it's going to play that animation infinitely until the character hits the ground. Now the second that character hits the ground, it's going to play the jump, I should say jump down, dang it. It's going to play the jump down animation, right, the second half of that. And so as soon as it recognizes this character is on the ground, it's going to play this animation where they sort of hit and recover. Right? If Unreal ever downloads, oh, it's actually downloading now. Mine is 5%. About an hour. Okay. Let's hope it goes a little faster than that. If it doesn't, we may just have to do this in phases, which means I'll readjust some of our schedule. So.
The same thing happened last year.
So yeah, something happened. Like, it's so frustrating. Like, Unreal really, I just don't know why we can't have a version of it in the labs that's old. I understand game design needs a newer version, but I need a version that we don't have to spend hours on getting working.
We need to update at least one semester, or it's every like 9 weeks, or every few weeks.
Okay, so while that's downloading, let's go ahead and start adding our jump animations, right? So all of this, for me, the best way to do this is to animate it all in one long sequence that I just think of as the jump animations. So I'm going to use the same frame range to do that, right? So my jump up is going to be pretty quick. Jump underscore up. I'm going to make that about 5 frames, right? Let's go to, say, frame 1,000, and I will go from 1,000 to 1,005, right? Now I may need to shift these later, but that's all right. The next one is jump underscore loop. That's going to be 1,005 to, let's do like a 60 frame loop. So 1,065. Right? And then my jump underscore, I'm just going to do DN for down, so it's easier. It's going to be 1,065 to, let's say, 1,000 and 1,000. It may end up being 1,100, but right now let's do 1090. Right? So that entire jump sequence is less than 100 frames. Right? Really quick up. The character's going to push off the ground really quick and get into that idle pose. It's going to hover in that idle pose for a little while, however long it's falling. And then as soon as it hits the ground, we're going to have a quick reaction where it hits the ground and sort of recoils, right? So you'll see we have these 6 animations in here. Really now what we need is to start getting some keyframes. Up to 10%. And now it's only 1 hour and 5 minutes. Somehow we 5 minutes longer. That's why I said download this to your D drive, because hopefully that means it'll be on every D drive in this computer or in this building. If you're downloading it to your personal one, that's fine too. Okay. So we have these animations. This will save with our project, right? So I'm going to go ahead and start saving this now, just so I have it. File, save scene as, and it's putting it in the mesh project folder for some reason. I don't want that. I'm going to create a new folder, call it anim, and we'll call this Zelda.0001. Save as. You only have to save it as an MA file. File, save scene as. So if you ever get that error where it says unusable file type or whatever, that's all that means. So it means we change this to ASCII. This file type. Change it from my binary to my ASCII. Save as. Some of them will give you an error if you try to save it as a different file type, and the file type I opened was an MA, so it won't let me save it as an MB. There's reason. It's usually because there's a mental ray node or something like that in there. Okay, so we're going to come back to this game exporter in a minute, but right now, I need to see when certain animations are happening, right? So this is not animations that we're going to keep, right? But I'm going to go through all of these, and I'm going to make animations, or make very quick, very dirty animations that let me see what I need to when I'm playing the game, right? So basically, if I get my character into the game, I need some indicator that the idle is playing, right? So for the idle animation, it can be anything, but for me, the idle animation, I'm going to do something silly, right? I'm going to select the head control, hit S, and I'm just going to have it do something like that. Back up to 0. There we go. S. I'm going to go ahead and set auto key on. So now my idle animation is that.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. Yours can be whatever you want it to be, right? If you want your character to do whatever. We just need something that I recognize when I get this in Unreal and I get everything plugged up. I need to be able to recognize that Unreal is currently triggering my idle animation. Okay? I'm going to delete this later, but really this is the level of detail you need to be putting into stuff at this point. Do not actually try to animate your character. So I'm going to go to the run animation. The run animation is usually pretty easy. I just need to set 2 keyframes. I'll grab the feet here. I think I made mine 200 frames, so 100 to 300. Just kind of quickly so I can make sure I am setting keyframes on everything. I'm going to figure out where my character's selection sets are. I wonder if they actually just don't even have them in here. Global. Yeah, they're all in there. So that was one of the sort of, that's kind of a pain in the butt with this rig. There's no easy way to select all of the controls. So here's how I'll do it. I'm going to go to Show and set that to None. And then Show, set that to NURBS Curves. Right? And then I should be able to just drag select everything. Now recognize I'm only selecting the things that are visible when I do this. Right? My character's IK arms, I'm not selecting those right now because they're not visible. Let me make sure, yeah. So if I open up my script editor right here, which again is down here below my play button, this little box here, I'm gonna say edit, clear all, and then drag select all of that again. So that should select my entire character. I can go in here to custom, make a button, Mel. And just so I'll know which one this is later, I'll call this Zelda. Shelves. So now I have my Zelda selection set, right? So I'm going to go back to my idle, and just so I know everything has a key on it, I'll key everything there. And the reason for that is so I don't have to unkey certain things on certain animations. So for my run, I want to do that one pretty simply. Click S, S, and I want to do, let me go ahead and turn my polygons back on so I can see them. I'm just going to do like a skiing animation, right?
Wait, is this for the rest?
Yeah.
Okay, we moved on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. And then for this one, do the opposite. All right. So there we go. There's my run animation. Playback speed, real time. It's really playing it like that. And actually, my idle animation, if you notice, it's actually kind of slower than I thought it was, because that's 200 frames. Which means to me, maybe I need to make that one faster just so I can see it happening. Again, I'm just trying to make an animation that lets me know that everything is that the animation is triggering. Right? So I get, there we go. That's my new idle animation. Okay. Let's do an attack animation. There we go. So again, I want to be able to zero everything out. I'll select everything. Actually, I guess I could just zero these feet out. Select everything on the Zelda rig and hit S. My punch animation is pretty easy. Punch. Really want to make it better? Make it a big punch. Punch. I put that key in the wrong spot though. I want to just move that back to here. And so, actually this punch animation is way too long. I'm going to make it come back by about frame 50. And then I'll change my frame range there from 700 to 750. Okay, here comes the difficult ones. Jump up. So jump up is not going to start in our idle pose. Jump up is going to start somewhere in that transition up to the jump, right? So I'm probably going to just push it just so we can see what it looks like a little bit more. I'll do something like this. Maybe keep doing that. Push my character's hips up in the air a little bit. Maybe I will go ahead and rotate up on this just so I can see that happening. And I'll put the arms up in the air too because that's going to make it make sense. So this is where the animation starts, right? Like she's jumping up in the air. Key everything. Now here's where it gets a little confusing. Once we get in Unreal, for our character to jump in the air, we are not going to make it go up into the air inside of Maya, right? The reason for that is because when you hit the jump button, basically there's like a little capsule shape that's moving around your entire scene. Whenever you hit the space bar, that capsule shape is what pops up into the air, right? And so that capsule shape is going to carry our character up into the air. So if I make the character jump up in the air too far as well, then that means the capsule is going to move it up and the animation is going to move it up, and the character is actually going to be twice as high as I wanted it to be. So I'm going to end this animation on 105 as something a little different, right? So I'll just hit key everything, and then I'll just move that foot control just up to here. So I can see it a little bit better. I will also just kind of curl my character forward like this. So that means that entire animation looks like this. All right. Very quick. After our character gets up in the air, we need that pose to continue to loop for a little while. So select everything. I want a key on that one and a key on this one. And how I can tell it's looping is I'll just do like a little rotation on the chest right in the middle, right? So we'll do something like, maybe missing the chest on it. Something like that, right? And so our jump loop now is going to look like this. So I'm just making some stuff. You don't have to do it exactly like this by any means. Okay. And then our jump down is basically just going to get us back to our idle pose. So I can go to my idle pose, select everything, I'll right click and copy that. And on my jump down, I want to end on that, paste. And so what I get now on that jump down is that, right? What I need instead is a quick, like maybe 2-frame transition to this foot being on the ground. Right? Something like this. Two frames may even be too much. It may work over one. And then a quick squash from that, right? Maybe something like that. And then the rest of this animation is just the character kind of settling back into it, right? So this is my down. Okay. See where Unreal is. 25%. Only 1 hour and 10 minutes to go. But I believe it, even though it was 1 hour and 5 minutes to go 10 minutes ago. Okay. Let's go ahead and save this file. File. Increment and save. So, these next few steps are really how we get this out of Unreal, or how do we get this out of Maya and into Unreal. But since Unreal isn't working, we're going to get this out of Maya, and we're going to test it very briefly in something called FBX Review. Okay? So FBX Review isn't installed on here, so it means we have to install it. Again, this is under the file up in the network, right? So if I go to PTSUE3, DIGM classes, Greg, character animation, resources, and it's right here, FBX Review. It's much smaller. It's only 21 kilobytes. So if I double click on that, this will install it on your computer, or on my computer. So you need to go ahead and install this as well, even though I know it's downloading all that other stuff. Hopefully this one will go faster.
Sorry, which one's that?
It's this Autodesk FBX Review up in the character animation resource folder. So you can just double click that. It's going to ask for you to accept, and I say sure, Autodesk, whatever. And then I hit next on this, and it should install relatively quickly, even though we're downloading that other software package. And then we're going to hit finish. So, how many of you have used an FBX file for something else in the past? Anybody? What did you use it for?
Lighting and rendering.
Lighting and rendering? Was it to get a file from like ZBrush into
From Maya to Painter.
Maya Painter? Okay, yeah, that works. So FBX is a file transfer format, right? It was actually originally, I think, Caldara or something like that. The people who originally made Motion Builder, I think, is the ones who came up with that format. And it became a way that we can transfer models, skeletal data, and animation data between different software packages, right? So if you're sending something to ZBrush, you may be using FBX. If you're sending something to Unreal or Unity, you may be using FBX. It's a really diverse and versatile file format. It's also one of the few file formats that all the different programs that recognize it can use to recognize animation information. Now, what's important to recognize about this, though, is that it's only recognizing keyframe information, not rigging information. Right? It's recognizing the skeleton It's recognizing the skinning on that skeleton, but it's not recognizing your constraints. It's not recognizing your IK, right? So what that means is we have to export out the mesh and then the skeleton that is being driven by the rig in order to get this into Unreal. Unreal will never understand your rig. That's not even possible. To transfer rigs between two softwares is really just, nobody does that, right? You can kind of do a workaround in some software packages, but really all this is your rig is a way of controlling the skeleton. And once you've controlled the skeleton exactly the way you want it, what Maya's going to do is bake all of that animation information onto the skeleton and then just export the skeleton and the mesh, right? Does that make sense? Somebody explain it to me again. Let's see.
It's not gonna bring up the rigs, but it's gonna add all the information to the skeleton.
Yeah, actually is. So we're not exporting out any of the rigging information. We're exporting out just skeleton data and mesh data, right? And how that skeleton is manipulating the mesh. So that's where this export process really messes up sometimes, right? Is if you don't have the right things selected, when you export, it's not going to bake out the animation correctly. It's not going to do anything correctly. It's just going to export all the wrong things, right? So the things we need to export is the skeleton and the mesh. FBX review is a way for us to see if what we exported out was the right thing. Now we could also just import this straight into Unreal in 1 hour and 20 minutes. So this is so frustrating. The frustrating part is it may not finish before class is over. So if it doesn't, we'll talk about that. So FBX review is what just allows us to review that FBX after we export it. This game exporter thing that we've been using here is what exports out our FBXs from Maya. But to export correctly, we have to select the right things, right? So I'm going to show you a couple of things within this rig, but every rig is going to be a little different, right? So we definitely need, if we have our outliner open, we definitely need to export out the mesh. Right? In this case, I just need the body mesh, probably just the visible body mesh, so just these pieces here, right? So I'll definitely need those, right? I'll also need the skeleton. And so that's what's hard to find. And it only will work inside of a game engine if the skeleton is all one hierarchy structure. Now, how many of you are currently in technical direction? Okay. So that means the rest of you took it in the past? Okay. So, you know, when you start making a skeletal chain, all of those joints have to be connected to each other for the rig to work inside of Unreal. Unreal tries to fix it if it's not, but sometimes it just messes it up, right? So that's one of the things I've done is I've gone through here and made sure that all of these rigs that I've given you have a single hierarchy skeletal structure. In this case, we can find this under, I have to dig for it a little bit, but I think it's under Global Move Group. And then, let's see here, yes, this BIP01 skeleton group. If I expand that out, you'll see that right here, this BIP001 root, that's all of our skeleton, right? So what I need to do is select all of that as well. So I'm actually going to select all of that now, right? I may even select this skeletal group above it just in case. So I hold down Shift, I can select all of that. I go up here to Mesh, hold down Control, and select all of that. Those are the only elements in our scene that need to be exported. Okay? I can show you where those are on all the other rigs. The advanced skeleton rig actually makes it kind of easy for you. But digging through all of that can get a little frustrating, and especially like maybe you'll go back to export later and you'll accidentally select a different group of stuff, and then when you export it out, it won't go into Unreal correctly. So it's really kind of frustrating. So this game exporter makes it easier on you. If you look at this little button right here, so within our game exporter, it's up here like where it says export all, and then there's this blank field. Yes. So after you have everything you needed selected, we can make a selection set that will always select those again for us. That's what this little circle with a plus sign is up here in the game exporter. If I click that, it'll let us create this, and I'll just call this export, I'm going to say export A, just in case I have the wrong thing selected and I have to come back and make an export B, right? So if I hit OK, you'll notice earlier it was set to export all. That would just export everything in the scene. Right? Sometimes that works, but it's really heavy and not the right way to do it. So instead, I'm going to go to Export Object Set, and then from this drop down, I'll choose Export A. Okay. Now I need to choose a directory to export this to. I'll click my little directory folder. Right now, it's taking me straight to my Zelda project. I'll create a new folder in there, call that Exports, say Choose. And then I need a clip file prefix, okay? So what this means is, if you look down here below it, you'll see very faintly, it says idle.fbx, right? But you may have more than one character, right? Whose idle is this? For me, this is Zelda's idle, right? Zelda underscore. And so now when I click out of that, you'll see that this now says Zelda underscore idle.fbx. So that means when it exports out these animations, it will name them in that way. Okay. So you'll notice we're in the animation clips, so that's good. But we also need to export out the model. So we go to this model tab along the top. I'll go ahead and choose that same exports folder. It actually automatically takes me there. And then I'll just call this Zelda.
Sorry, what folder are you putting in?
I just created one. You can create it anywhere, but I created it in my project folder and called it Exports. Now once you've done all of that, I would go ahead and save scene, because that will save all this export information for you. And I'm going to go look at my my folder here. So it's under, let's see, this computer, D, dragging class, game animation. So right now it's empty. But if I hit this export button, you'll see it sort of cycles through some stuff. Now I made a mistake, because under the model tab, I still have it set to export all. So that's all right. Let's go ahead and let it export. I could hit escape to cancel it, but I'll use this as an example. And you'll see that once it's done, I can hit OK, and my export folder now has this Zelda file in it, right? And you'll see it's an FBX file. Now it's 14 megabytes, and that was sort of part of my problem is I didn't have the right thing selected. So if I go to Export Object Set, choose Export A, hit Export again. Yes, I want to replace it. You'll see the actual file is probably much smaller. Yeah, it's only 6 megabytes. Now how we can see if this works is if I go to that exports folder and I double click on this, it should now open it up in the FBX review folder. And so that means this is what I exported out. All right, this is my model. And you'll see that the fact that the character is deformed a little bit, like she's squatting, like the deformation has worked on this, means that this is why I think this will work in Unreal, right? So that was just the model file. We'll talk about how we use these differently. It looks like tomorrow. We'll probably talk about it tomorrow, or Thursday. Yeah. Yes?
What if your file doesn't open up?
It's not opening in FBX Review?
No.
Did you, and you installed it? Up in the network folder, it was the, under resources, this Autodesk FBX Review. Yeah. Try installing it again. If not, we may have to manually associate it, but that should fix the associations. Just run that on it. So here comes the real test, though. I need to export out all of these animation clips too. Okay, and this is where this saves us time. Is if I have all of this settings set up, I can just hit export, and it's going to cycle through it. It's going to bake out my animations onto the joints, and it's going to export each animation into that folder. So you'll start to see it happening in here under exports in a second. It takes it a little bit. Okay, I think the first one looks like it exported. Refresh. Maybe not. There we go. So the first one, Zelda Idol, is done. This may take this is taking longer than it usually does on a rig, but I think this has got a lot going on it. So now if I double click on this Zelda Idol and open it up in the FBX review, you'll see that there's the character. She's actually in her idle pose. And if I sort of right click to bring this viewport back up and hit play, we'll play the animation the way I did it, right? So that means that this worked. Teaching's hard, y'all. It's hard. Yes?
Sorry, I was going to learn the thing you mentioned. Could you go over exporting the animations one more time?
Yeah. Like the setting it up or just exporting it?
Just exporting.
So yeah, for exporting it, well, it's actually still exporting them. Give me a second here and let it. Yeah, mine's going to take just a minute. So probably the easiest way is just to kind of look at it here. Let me let this one export really quick, and then I'll. There it is. So the run's done. What I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit escape in Maya just to kill this export. So I can show you all. It may or may not end it. So now we're up to 41%. What's happening? It says it's only going to take an hour. Sorry, this may not cancel the export. So you can see the run's done now, and it looks marvelous. Come on, just stop. So the biggest thing on exporting, while it won't let me select it, is selecting all of the mesh and all of the joints. So I can actually probably just do one at a time while it's exporting on that, and then creating the selection set on it. So okay, you already got that. Actually, you look okay. If you get a model, you get that set up. Just hit export, and it should go to the folder. Okay.
Where do I?
Oh, yeah. Awesome. And then the other thing, we just do the same thing on the animation tab. Export down at the bottom.
So you just, would it export everything, or just?
It'll export it will, but you have to, where you have it set to export A, it's going to export everything in that, but it'll export all of the ones that you have to check for by. So that's a good point. If you don't need to export everything, that's what those little check marks are down the side. Let's say you just want to export out your run. You can uncheck everything and hit run, and it'll export that out, right? So I actually just killed that that export, which means I want to go ahead and re-export attack, pretty much everything except for run and idle. So I can check those and hit export, and it will start exporting again. Okay. My plan was to try to get all this into Unreal today. Obviously, we've hit some hiccups. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. So instead, what I'm going to have you all do is get to this point, like get a proxy version of your models exported out by next class period. And what I think we're going to do is actually just postpone that homework, because it may end up just messing up our entire schedule. So that homework isn't due now. If you want to follow ahead, the D2L clip or the D2L link will lead you to this. Pretty much what we've gotten through is video 1 right now. What we're going to go through next is blueprints and state machines. Well, we haven't gotten through the import part of this, so we've got through half of this video. If you want to go ahead and start sort of watching ahead and trying to implement this into Unreal once it gets all downloaded, have at it. That seems like a good place to be. But we'll just not do the homework at the beginning of next class, and instead we'll finish working on getting all of this into Unreal. So sorry about that, y'all. Try to have a copy of Unreal locally when you come in next class period, though, just for that reason. All right. Any questions so far about this? So while we're waiting, since we're kind of finished up with that, if you are wanting to do this in 2D, look up Construct 3. This is game making software. Again, if you've never used it, there's tons of free tutorials out there, including these templates that you can start with. And so you could start with probably the platformer right here, right? And just say open project. And this is going to get you a lot of the game already ready to play, right? So we hit this play button, it'll pop it out here. And so we got a playable version of the platformer. Only problem is the platform is, or the character in the environment is just these things, right? The other thing is we don't have a couple of the extra things that we need to happen in here, like triggers for the punch and environment pieces, right? So this is probably the good place to start if you're going to start with a 2D platformer. The other thing that you'll want to work on is getting the layout to be something that's the right resolution, because right now that's really small. The way this works, though, is very similar to Blueprint, except slightly different. You have your layout stage where we're at right now, and then your event sheet is just this sort of visual coding thing, right? The only problem with it, you have to create an account if you want to create more than 25 events. And so they're already at 17 just with this platformer, so you'll probably want to sign in. This is actually It's a little simple, but it's actually a full game 2D engine. Like there are games that are on the Apple Store right now that are made in this. So it's definitely probably the place to start. And I can help you a little bit with this one too if you decide you want to go this route. So, any questions? I know you got lots of questions, but. Okay, well, let's go ahead and call it there. You're welcome to hang out and keep working and getting these exported. That way you just could be done until next class period. But otherwise, class is yours. I'll go ahead and upload this video now.